Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Canopy Cast with your hosts Christopher McGurn, John Michael Price, and Michael O'Connor. Canopy Cast is a guest-based podcast that showcases an ecosystem of expertise through thought leadership and innovation. We bring people together to provide value for our audience through impactful stories and experiences. Canopy Cast, an ecosystem of expertise. Today's episode is brought to you by Oxenham Group. The Oxenham Group is a recruiting company that focuses on why a person takes a job and what makes them stay. They do this by understanding one's motivation, skills, and personal mission. Oxenham's proprietary process focuses on three main areas: sociologist-prepared questions, IBM-proven assessments, and Gallup-Clifton strengths. The combined results give the interviewer valuable insight into the potential for close alignment and the likelihood of engagement. For more information, please call 605-610-3026 or visit their website at oxenhamgroup.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Canopy Cast. This is your co-host Michael O'Connor here with my other two co-hosts, Christopher McGurn and John Michael Price. And today we are greeted by a very special guest, Mr. Chris Chapman, the Executive Director at Capital Analytics, founder and podcast host at Next Level Minds. Chris, thanks so much for coming. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to just sit down and kind of chop it up with y'all on the podcast here.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So to start off, yeah, great to have you, man. So to start off, for all of our listeners and viewers, I just love to ask, what's your story? Where have you come from? Where are you at right now, and where you're going? I want to leave it as open-ended to you as you like.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say my story originally starts in Charleston, South Carolina, where I grew up. Really age range was that around 12 years old. I kind of realized with my family that, we were middle class, always had a roof over our head, but, never went on any family vacations, never really, drove any nice cars. It was just kind of go to work, put food on the table, have a roof over the head. So I realized at an early age, because Charleston, there are some fairly wealthy people there, I was starting to question, like, okay, why does this friend parents have this car and go on these trips, and why can't I do that? So I started questioning the overall tactic of money, why some people have it, why some people don't. So at a very early age, I started adopting financial principles. I would go door to door asking if I could cut grass for people just to make money. And I literally had like a budget on a piece of paper where I write in income, expense, and that was my first raw budget right there. So at an early age, I learned not only personal finance, but extreme work ethic as well, because it was kind of like, hey, if I want to help pay for my hobbies, typical kid, I was in Charleston, surfing, skateboarding. Those were my two big things. I have to come up with some financial resources to provide for that. So fast forward from there, hit the age of 16, and that's where you can get your big bad W-2 job. So I ended up applying for a local grocery store. Had a great interview, ended up getting the job. So typical thing from there was I was a cashier from about 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. after school, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, I would work either an 8-hour shift Saturday or Sunday, and then cut the grass on the other day. So at 16 years old, I was having two sources of income coming in. And that's when it was really like, okay, here's what money can do for you. You obviously have to work to get there. So I was very fortunate to adopt that principle at an early age. But my story kind of shifted a little bit because I was in my junior year. Colleagues, friends at the time, still are some of my good friends, but they were all getting into 4-year universities. And that's one of the things that was at the completely back of my radar, because when I wasn't working, I just cared about the social scene. So anyway, stepped into my guidance counselor's office junior year, and disclaimer here, I don't think college is everyone. I think you can still be extremely successful without it, but that's just something that I wanted to do at that time, and ended up going into the guidance counselor's office. And she said, hey, you unfortunately have a 0% chance to get into any school. Your GPA is barely above a 2.3 right now on a 5.0 scale, horrible on the SAT and ACT. So from then, it was a huge just slap in the face. I'm sure y'all have each had those in various business and life circumstances. So from then, it was like, okay, wow, here's where I want to get to. Here's where I'm at. What are some initial steps that I can take to get to that, next level of actually getting into the university I wanted to go to? So that goes to, the three principles of I changed the people I hung out with, I changed the places that I was going, and I changed the things that I was doing. So, I dropped some friends, started hanging out with a better crowd. Places I was going, instead of just, going to a party or something on a Friday or even a Thursday, or going to work, I would drop a couple of shifts and actually open a book and learn for once. And then from the, things perspective, I was just always open to growing. So fast forward from there, I ultimately got into the College of Charleston, which I was really happy about, obviously having that 0% chance. And then ultimately scaled up appropriately there and was able to transfer to Clemson, which was a top 20 public school at that time. And even did so well at College of Charleston that I was able to get a state scholarship to go to Clemson. So, in like 3 or 4 year time frame, I went from that 0% chance to going to Clemson with a state scholarship. And during that time at Clemson, I got as involved as I could, various clubs, organizations, was working at Allstate part-time, just putting my hand in a ton of different industries, because I'm a huge believer that if you really want to take your success to the next level, then you got to have that diversification in what you're doing. So at that time, I was learning so much about business, just networking, and ultimately graduated with honors. Landed a job up here in Charlotte where I was doing some IT consulting, staffing work on the account management end, working with a lot of Fortune 500 clients on project-based resources. And then a year after that, I took the role I'm in now as an executive director at Capital Analytics, where we make annual economic business reports on major cities. So I do the Charlotte and Atlanta region. And then additionally from there, I also started the Next Level Minds podcast and just trying to help 1 million people reach a next level. So here we are today.
That's fantastic, man. Congratulations. And truly inspiring. Really. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely means a lot. And my mom, for example, is always like, I'm so proud of you guys. Probably know how moms are always,
Yeah. Yep.
So it's just hilarious in that way.
Before we get to like the technical stuff, the industry stuff, like I love how you took yourself from that 0% chance to the 100% chance. Like I love the way that you described that. They told you you're at a 0% chance. You just put in the work, and you got to where you're trying to be. So you got to like 0 to 100. It wasn't even just you had a shot. You like people told you that there was no chance.
Yeah.
And you just took that upon yourself to just change that and change the outcome, which I just love. I feel like you could write a book about that, like just that mentality.
Oh yeah, and I think every problem out there has a solution somewhere. It may be 1,000 miles away, but a solution somewhere out in the world. And it's just, I think as the individual, I think it's just up to you to actually figure out the steps and processes that it takes to find that solution. So
Yeah, exactly. I love the way you described. You had to just kind of go back and do work, like just read and learn about what you wanted to learn and about what you wanted to experience. I guess like going into college, was there a certain like major that you wanted to study? Was there a certain direction you wanted to take? Were you thinking a certain way, or was it kind of just like, I gotta do this? I want this.
yeah, so when I was at College of Charleston for that first year, it was general business, and I was extremely behind on math credits just because math and never will be, except personal finance, never my forte. So I was at general business and kind of had another hiccup because Clemson was like, yeah, if you don't have these math credits, like you can't get in. I'm sorry. And I was like, okay. So I ended up convincing my parents, like, hey, let's go up and actually talk to admissions. And that was when I like really kind of sold myself of like, hey, I know I don't have these math credits, but like, here's where I came from. Here's where I am now. I'm just looking for a shot here. Ultimately got in there. But, to answer that question, it was general business. And then when I got to Clemson was when it was business management and then entrepreneurship minor.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I love the determination. It's really inspiring, to say the least. And yeah, I know, like for myself personally, I've never been like the academic. Like I've always like just hated school and like and I always like was the guy who worked like 2 or 3 jobs at a time in high school all 4 years and played sports. So it was a lot of that, like kind of like you have school and then you go to work and then you go to school and then you go to work and then on the weekends you have sports games or you work. So it's just listening to you like go through that was very relatable, and I just loved like the determination and the mindset that you have, and And I think it really reflects the whole next level mind that we'll get into in a minute here with your podcast. But I love that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I think determination. I mean, honestly, when I first got up to Clemson, I was a sophomore. Like I said, involved in a lot of different things, and honestly, like no joke, I really struggled with with basic business classes, and people were making fun of me, like, "Oh, dude, it's business, like it's an easy major." But I was like, "You guys don't get it." In high school, when you were taking AP classes, I was getting C's and D's in CP classes, so I have far less experience than you guys do. So it was kind of just having to bite the bullet and like start from scratch. I mean, going to like math 101 tutoring sessions was kind of embarrassing, but it was just had to go back and do what you had to do to end up passing and graduating. So
Yeah. There's also something to be said about, self-paced education as well, self-paced learning, that like, even though you may not have, paid attention in high school or whatever that looked like, if you just cared less, you might have been behind people when you got to college, but putting all that extra effort in the end put you way ahead. And that's what people don't realize is like people get comfortable and they're like, oh, like I'm getting a good grade, so like I'm doing well. But like grades don't really equate to the drive and actually excelling in whatever it is, because like if you pay attention and you retain the information long enough to pass a test, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to go run a business if you get all A's in all your business classes in college. But I just want to also commend you for that 0 to 100 in high school to college, but also like you graduated in 2018, right?
yeah,
And yeah, you're already an executive director. Like, congrats on that. I mean, like that's not an easy place to get to either. So like you also went from 0 to 100 like as soon as you graduated.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
not many people get into that position that quickly.
And I think that's actually a really great transition. Like I know the three of us are very interested to hear about that journey in particular, about getting to that position outside of school, what that position is like now. Like what have you learned from that? Like tell us about that role.
yeah, definitely. So I took that job a year after I was graduating, and not gonna lie, it was kind of not a battle, but it was a little bit harder than just a typical interview process because I was looking up on LinkedIn who the other individuals were that had this role in different cities, and it looked like age range, not that age really matters, but it looked like they had 7 to 10 years of experience. I'm sitting here with one, and I think what the process like to get that role was obviously like applying and then really just like selling yourself on the vision that you have for your own success. So on that interview, it's like instead of saying your greatest strengths, it was like, hey, here's my strengths, but like here's what I'm going to do for your company to really take it to that next level. I started the Charlotte location literally from like complete scratch, which was that's why they were so picky on who to hire, because not a lot of people can just come into a new market with no branding, nothing at all. No one knows who you are and actually build it up. So it was just everything was just selling myself on how I can take their company to the next level. How can I build the Charlotte market? How can I come in and make a name for myself? And, I'll never forget, I got that call of like, hey, we want you to come down to the headquarters in Miami and interview down here. And I was like, what? I made it this far? That's awesome. um, and I remember that day, like literally from Charlotte, I had to be in Miami at like 9:30. So the flight was at 5. And I was up all night, like researching. So I get to the Miami airport, I'm beyond exhausted. And I'm like, there's gotta be something that can wake me up. So I literally got a triple espresso shot before the interview.
There it is.
Walked into the interview, had like a couple role plays of like sales perspectives, everything like that. Final thing was just sitting down with the CEO, pretty long. It's like 45 minutes. And then after the interview, she's like, okay, well, like, we'll definitely be in touch. Like, we really like speaking with you. And she's like, by the way, how many espresso shots have you had this morning? I was like, honestly, I've had 3 espresso shots, but hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Wow.
Wow.
That's funny that she said that.
Yeah. So, and yeah, if y'all want that, I can definitely kind of like touch on the day to day and like things that I've learned too. Definitely just wanted to make sure I highlight how I got the role though.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that because, especially a lot of people that are listening, I know the demographic that specifically chimes on the podcast is that younger audience who are really aspirational and, wanting to build their careers. So I think, a lot of them would love to hear that as well. Like especially if someone from your state, you know, like starting so young in that role, like what that looks like and how you've kind of grown into it too.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, we built out annual economic reports. When I first started, I was strictly over the Charlotte region, building an annual report for Charlotte. It takes about 8 months to complete. During that time, we interviewed 200 to 250 of the top CEOs and local city officials on why companies should do business and invest in Charlotte. So essentially, you know, my day to day starting out was like straight up cold call these top level CEOs, city mayors, city managers of like, hey, uh, you know, my name's Chris Chapman. I want to sit down with you and interview you for this report we're doing. Everyone was like, I'm good. Like, what are you talking about? Who are you guys? So it was a lot of rejection on the front end. But then it's just going back to that continuous learning mindset of like, okay, how can I get these people to meet with me? What can I do? And essentially it was like, you know, we're blessed to have other organizations. So what I did was find the same companies that are in Charlotte that are also in the other cities that we work in. And I would just have, you know, the executive directors of other markets like help tee up some introductions. And once I had like 5 or 10 meetings under my belt, was then I could use for leverage. Cause, you know, if ABC real estate firm denies me, I'm like, hey, well, you know, I just met with BCD real estate firm. Like, why don't you want to sit down with us? So you can kind of use that as leverage, if that makes sense. Um, but I'd say like big learning lessons is just like I'm super young in this role, and the people that I'm meeting with are like 45, 50, 60, some 70-year-old CEOs who obviously are at like the very top of the food chain. So when I'm going into these meetings, at least prior to COVID, it was all in person. It was kind of these guys looking at me like, who is this guy? Like I literally have a son who is his age, and you know, so you know, I've had a couple of people be like, "Oh, like, you know, I wear my Clemson rings. Like, when did you graduate?" And I'd be like, it's 2018." They'll be like, "Wait, my son's about to graduate. He's like your age." Like, and then it would just have to go in and like show yourself of like, "Hey, I mean business. Like, I may be young, but like, here's why I'm here. Here's what we're doing." And then ultimately, what I've really found of speaking with all these individuals is like a lot of people put CEOs and executives on a pedestal, which I believe they should be there from like a work ethic standpoint, because it does take an exponential amount of work to really get to that level, whether you're founding a company, moving up in a company, whatever the case may be. But a lot of people also put them on a pedestal of like, oh, these guys are gods, like they're not on my level. Like, you know, I don't think I'm associated with them. And it's like going in of like, you know, these people are the same as you. They sleep, they shave, they eat, they, you know, have relationships. So it's going in and just finding that common ground, which is something that like really helped me out. Um, and just common rapport ground. Like if you can't build rapport with somebody, literally just ask like, hey, what are some highlights of your week? Everyone has at least one highlight and then go off of that. So
Yeah. I don't know about the whole sleeping and eating part, but yeah, we're definitely all human.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the
Definitely.
three of us are business owners, and I know something we all like to say and all live by is that the business owns us more than we own it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's it's very relatable when it comes to the food and sleeping and self-care
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Chris doesn't shave. Yeah.
and shave. As you can
Yeah,
It,
that's definitely something that you have to keep a close eye on, because you know you definitely can't go into a startup with a 9 to 5 mindset.
oh yeah.
You've got to put in the extra time. But the biggest thing is like, how do you have that work life balance? You know, like how do you still sleep and eat and everything else? Because you know, like you said, you have relationships. Even if it's just friends, like even if you're not, you know, in a romantic relationship, like you still got to keep up your friendships too. And if you're not careful, like all that stuff falls by the wayside super easily. I read something really interesting that earlier on LinkedIn actually. It was like humans are the most interesting animals because they sacrifice their health and like everything else in their life for money and to work, and then they sacrifice their money for health later on, and then they're like they never like find the balance.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Finding balance is tough. I definitely think it's something that I like still continue to struggle with sometimes because, you know, I'm the executive director with Capital Analytics here. doing the podcast, really like scaling that. I'm also, a co-founder of a mobile travel app that like we're trying to get our beta off the ground right now. So like, and I literally like just got engaged. So it's like,
Hey.
yeah.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
humble plug.
When's the wedding date?
So her and I went to Charleston actually like last weekend. It's venues are scarce, I'm telling you, down there. So we're kind of playing with some dates for next summer, but
That's awesome,
Okay,
man.
okay.
That's awesome.
yeah, thank you. So she'll be stoked that I brought her up on the podcast. So,
Yeah.
um,
Chris's fiance.
yeah, but just going back to that work-life balance, like I'm sure you guys too are balancing like a ton of different things, juggling a lot. John, Michael,
Yeah.
you mentioned you're about to have a baby. Like I don't even
Mhm.
want to know what that's like yet, but, um, but yeah, so like everyone balances a lot of stuff, but I think something that's really just changed my work-life balance is like not dropping things or not, never sleeping, but it really goes all back to that planning and preparation. Like the night before, I have a list that I made called After Corporate America Grind List. And it's stuff like, hop on the podcast, go work out, spend some time on social media ads for my podcast, spend some time with my startup team. And I literally make that list at like 7, 8 p.m. the night before after 5 p.m. So it's like I already know what I'm doing after work. And then even prepping for the corporate role from like, 8 to 5, I'm looking at the calendar saying like, okay, here's what I'm going to do on this meeting, blah, blah, blah. So that way when tomorrow starts I usually start working around 7, that from like 7 to, 9 p.m., it's all action steps rather than, planning, because planning takes away so much of your time during that critical window. And that's how I've been able to find like a significantly better work-life balance.
Yeah, I think that's super wise the way you're doing that. I commend you on that. And something I wanted to mention as well, I love the content that you have on LinkedIn. I mean, that's where we met, and you have these posts, and it's a lot of just like step by step, the do's, the don'ts, etc. And I really enjoy that. I wanted to let you know I really appreciate your content. And if you wouldn't mind, like, give us a little bit of an explanation of the inspiration, I guess, for that kind of content, because I see it. It's pretty regular on LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration there.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. So ever since I started on this, I guess, trajectory, and just like y'all, I'm probably only like 0.5% of the 100% that I want to get to in life. Obviously, there's room for growth, but ever since I started this trajectory, I'm like always thinking of like, okay, there's probably thousands and thousands and thousands of people that were in that position that I was in, of like stuck, not getting anywhere, whether it's not getting into college or just being stuck in the same job for 20 years and you feel like you can't get out. So, my really huge draw and huge goal is to impact over 1 million people by helping them reach a next level, whether it be in their business, personal, or career life. So going back to the LinkedIn post, I'm always trying to inspire others. And I found like the best way to do that is just by laying out action steps, because, you look at all the successful people in the world, like, Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, Gary Vee, the list could go on for hours. Look back and see what their habits, steps, and procedures were on a daily basis, and just naturally follow those. And like your odds of success will probably be exponentially higher than just like, oh, I'm just going to do my thing, work hard. It's like, okay, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. That's something, billionaires and millionaires do. I'm going to work hard at my job, and I'm also going to build a side hustle. That's what a lot of people have done who are million and billionaires. So it's like following those steps, which is why I like to give steps that have like really worked for me. And personally, I hate reading those like 5-paragraph LinkedIn posts, because it's like no one has time. Some of them are amazing, but like no one has time to read this. It's like one draw line, 5 steps, couple hashtags, and let's keep going.
Yep. No, that's one of the reasons why I like it. It's great. It's good stuff.
And that's a good transition too, talking about the content that you're putting out, your podcast. How did that start? What was the inspiration for you to start that, to reach out to touch 1 million people in that way? How are you inspired to do that? And, where has that kind of been, and where is it now?
Yeah. So growing up, as I mentioned, I was, part of a middle-class family, and my parents, and they still are to this day, like extremely social. So I remember being like 14, 15 years old, and they would always have their friends over. And I would always, instead of just going to play Xbox, I would always be out in the kitchen, and I would kind of strategically be like, this guy showed up in like a fancy looking car. that must mean he's successful. So I would literally go up to people, my parents' friends, and be like, oh, what do you do? Like, why are you there? How's this going? How's business? Like, I remember working landscaping one year and literally like asking the owner nothing about grass. I was like, so like, what's your accounting system that you use? Like, how do you grow your business? Do you do social media ads? Like, and he was like, who the heck is this like 16-year-old kid like asking me? So I've, with all that said, like I've always been super passionate of just hearing stories of how people grew in their business, their career, just their personal life, and taking themselves to that next level. And like I said, I've always like, ever since I started that trajectory, always been passionate about helping people reach the next level. So when I got up to Charlotte, it was like, okay, how can I combine my passion of hearing these entrepreneurial stories and helping people get to that next level? And I thought of the perfect, medium to do that was a podcast, because I wasn't extremely successful. I wasn't that guy who scaled 6 companies and invested in blah, 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 and done this. So, I was like, I have to establish some more credibility before I can go on stage and speak to a group of, 10,000 people. I was like, the perfect way to start with this is a podcast to connect, entrepreneurs, successful people to people who are hungry for that success. And I can kind of be the main streamline there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I love it. I mean, it's obviously a learning lesson. Like, I know y'all are fairly early in the process. I'm about a year and a couple months, and like, it's literally like something new every single day that you're going to learn. Like, Chris, shout out to you for like having a mic, dude. I didn't have that till episode like 20. So
Thanks, man.
Mine's on the way.
Yeah. I'm actually about to get a new one soon, but yeah. Appreciate it.
John Michael, you got the AirPods? Is that what you're rocking, or?
Yeah, so I use my computer mic. I just like to have the sound in feedback and all the other stuff. But yeah, I have a mic on the way. Mine's just backlogged with shipping right now. So I ordered it through Amazon, and then I don't know what happened, but the supplier that was shipping it was like, it updated the date, and they were like, hey, it's gonna come like 6 to 8 weeks from now. And I was like, well, that's not happening. So went to another site and ordered it somewhere else.
Yeah, dude. With COVID, it's like everything that you could possibly ever want is back ordered on Amazon. It's like,
yeah.
I guess that's not happening this year,
Yeah.
I think too many people are starting podcasts right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What mic are you using? Is it the Blue Yeti?
Yeah, I'm using the Blue Yeti. I think it works pretty well, honestly.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. That's the one I was gonna get. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's the number one for most people. So yeah. Yeah, that's something.
I wanted to ask.
Shout out to.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor.
Not sponsored by Yeti.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to just sarcastically, go into that, like, not a sponsor by Blue Yeti, best microphone on the market.
Yeah. I'm using the blue Snowball right now, so I'm also using blue. We got 2 blue microphones and 2 Apple AirPod Pro.
Yeah.
So there we go, Blue and Apple. There we go.
Yeah, huge Mac fans, huge Apple fans. But yeah, I wanted to ask specifically with your podcast, like, what is one of the, I'm not going to say favorite, because I feel like that's like throwing everybody else down, but like, what's one of your favorite episodes and why?
Yeah, so I pretty recent, I interviewed these individuals that also went to Clemson. They started a company, Kanga, and they were actually on Shark Tank and ended up getting investment from Mark Cuban. But these guys are just like true startup stories. Literally started as a class project, ended up doing a Kickstarter campaign at Clemson. I remember everyone like making fun of them of like, what are you guys doing? This is like, come on, this is just a class project. And then perfect a story of how they scaled appropriately. And then, getting on Shark Tank is a huge deal. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of people apply there to be on the show a year, and them getting picked out like a year after school. Literally, one of the guys on the show was still a junior in college, wasn't even 21. And the company is like a koozie for your beer, essentially. Not even going to try to go any more detail because I'm not with the company. Don't want to butcher that. But essentially they brought beers on stage. And the head of branding, he was like 20 at the time, and Shark Tank wouldn't let him drink a beer on the stage with the other sharks. So he's sitting here with like a Sprite or something in his hand while everyone else has a Bud Light. And like, that just goes to show, it's like, he's 20 years old, can't even drink a beer yet, and he's on the Shark Tank, which is amazing. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
probably biggest learning lesson there is like, I remember one of the co-founders mentioned this on the episode. He said, people, whether it's customers or investors or advisors, they all invest in the jockey, not the horse itself as much. So, it's such a simple product, but they obviously like such a great group of guys. I think people just bought into that vision they had.
Yeah, it's too true. We've had a lot of different conversations with investors, and they see a lot of ideas come across their desk. And one thing that we've heard consistently from everyone is like, it's not the idea that ropes them in, because like 90% of the time, like especially for these, really, really advanced investors, 90% of the stuff that comes across their desk is pretty good, because, the people that send it to them are vetting stuff before they send it. It's not like, they're posting on LinkedIn like, hey, I'd love to see everyone who has a startup idea, like send it to me. Like, when you're an investor, like you don't want that email that people are pitching to you with to be public. And so, like upwards of 90% of the stuff that's coming into their inbox or across their desk is like a fantastic idea. But like you said, they're really investing in the jockey. Like they really want to know who the person is that's going to be running it. Like who are the people we're investing in? Because if the idea is good, that's fantastic. But if you have a shit CEO, then the company's not going to go anywhere.
Oh yeah. And I think too, like even with just general sales, because like with the role I have, I'm over marketing, just branding, taking it, from point A to point B. And we also sell advertisements in the report to some of the companies we meet with. Like we're very strategic of who we pitch that to. And a couple of times I've literally had like the worst pitch. I'm like, this was just not good. But I've built such a rapport with this individual prior to going into pitching that he looked like he didn't even listen to the pitch. And it's like, sure, yeah, let's definitely do something. And I'm kind of sitting back like, what in the world? And we'll talk to people about it. I think it's because like they bought into my vision, my personality. And then it was kind of like, oh, I like this kid. Why wouldn't I do something? So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to another podcast. It's so funny how like information is circular, and how you're talking to one person is completely relevant to someone else. I'm sure you've had that happen a lot on your own podcast, where like you keep referencing like the last podcast you had, or like 3 podcasts ago.
oh yeah.
Oh, this came up when we were talking about it. But that goes back to something that we discussed someone a couple days ago, which is, you really need 3 things for people to buy in to whatever your idea or your product is, and they need to know you, like you, and trust you. And I think, you just hit the nail on the head with that as well. Is like, people, if they know you and they like you, it's a lot easier for them to trust you, and then everything else kind of goes out the window as long as you have a decent product.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that kind of goes back to one of the reasons why I got this role is because, when I went into the interview, I'm an extremely positive, energetic person. And going in at, granted the espresso shots helped, but
that gave you a little bit more energy, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, if this guy's gonna show up like this every day, like he's gonna get so much work.
Let's get an espresso so you can perform at work.
Yeah, yes, but yeah, like going into that interview, it's like, hey, how's it going? Like really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. It's like, instead of just sitting there like, oh, hey, how's it going? Was like trying to take that energy to the next level and kind of just right off the bat get bought into there. So
yeah, for sure.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left. So guys, I mean, if you have any questions, this is probably a good time for that.
Yeah, or Chris, if you have any questions for us. Guest Chris, not host Chris.
Yeah, multiple Chris's.
yeah, Chris squared. What is it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I guess I want one more kind of question for you, Chris. There, through this journey and your professional journey, what do you think was the most kind of impactful experience that you've had? You mentioned going door to door and offering lawn mowing to talking to your guidance counselor. Like, was there a moment that you experienced that you kind of decided you kind of wanted to take this journey and to go this route?
Yeah, definitely. So I would honestly say two things with that. So like number one, with with the high school situation of like watching everybody else get to that level, it was kind of like, wow, like I'm not taking something seriously that I need to start taking seriously. Goes back to hanging out with the appropriate people. Like you are the 5 people you associate yourself with. So that was a big turning point for me of like, okay, these people are here. I'm there. I need to start changing some things up because I'm just going to stay average my whole life if I don't. Additionally, more in like the professional landscape, when I got up to Charlotte, I was literally networking like a fool. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a little tough to do now with the whole virtual environment, but I mean, I was going to happy hours, I was going to Thursday night events, just trying to just get connected in the business community. And a huge turning point for me was like right when I graduated, I would look at people like, some of my friends who have very, successful parents, like, oh man, they're 45, 50, 60 years old. That's going to take so long to get, $1 million. Like, wow, I'm just going to be on this roller coaster for a long time. And then getting up to Charlotte, which is very business centric, I was meeting individuals who were like 27, 28, 30 years old who were members at a nice golf club, had a nice car, and were actually having multiple sources of income coming in. And that was a different turning point for me where I was like, oh, wow, like maybe it's not going to take till 45, 50 years old to get to that, multi-million-dollar level. And then it was kind of like associating myself with new people of like, hey, you're 30 years old. You obviously have built multiple incomes. Like, what can I do? Action steps, behavior steps to get to like that level as well. Cause I really want to be there. So that was a big turning point of like, it doesn't take 20, 30 years to get to that, I keep using money, which I don't think money's everything, but to get to that, financial successful point, it doesn't take 20, 30 years. It can take 5 to 10. It's obviously a ton of work along the way, but you can put yourself in various positions to get there way quicker than you would if you did it.
That's fantastic.
I think my last question for you, Chris, is for those who are disappointed or discouraged or just kind of scared to take that first step, right? Like maybe they're in high school, maybe they're in college, maybe they're not the academic and they want to be an entrepreneur, that kind of a situation. What's one thing that you would, advise them? Well, what's one piece of advice? What's the first step in your opinion to help our listeners and viewers here?
Yeah. So just rephrasing the question so I answer it properly, right? So at that level, but just want to get started, but don't really know the first steps there.
Yeah. What's the first step? Yep.
Yes. So first step is figure out not exactly, but figure out close to what you want, because if you don't have that target, then you're ultimately just going to be, it's a treadmill. You're just going to be running, 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 running with no destination. But, for me, it's like when I decided I did want to try to get into school or, did want to grow a business, it was like, I didn't know exactly what industry, but I was like, okay, I want to go to a 4-year school. What's next to do that? Reach out to people, learn, read, etc. Learn, get into Charlotte. It's like, I wanted to grow a podcast outside of the 9 to 5 and a company outside of that. Like, what are some steps there that I can take? And then ultimately, as I started scaling, as I started doing this, I realized like, okay, a podcast, that's a good idea. Okay. A mobile travel app, like that's going to be a good idea after COVID, people start traveling again. So I think first step there is figure out kind of close to what you want, because if you don't, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and get caught on that treadmill of life. Like, unfortunately, so many people have done lately.
Yeah. No, that's stellar. Thank you. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like real quick, like, don't mean to answer this in 2 parts, but like,
Oh, you're good.
something huge too is like, you know, just really break down like what does it take to get there. So with, I don't want to touch on this too much just because we're not on the app store yet. We're only on our beta version in the next few weeks, but we do have, I'm a co-founder of a mobile travel app. And originally my business co-founder and I were like, dang, this is going to cost like 30 grand to make. Like, we don't have that much money. We're both only a few years out of school. But then it's coming up with innovative solutions of like, okay, he came to Charlotte from Charleston. We sat down one day and we are like, you know what? Let's find a technical co-founder, which we have one now and he's amazing. We're like, let's find a technical co-founder. Let's give him equity. And we're like, wait, we don't have an LLC. Then it's like, how to do an LLC. Got on the phone with a lawyer, established everything right there. So it's just like constantly having solution mindsets. And like literally we're about to get this beta version developed. hopefully coming out, right after, when people start traveling again, but literally for less than like $200, which originally it was going to cost $3,000. Now it's 200. And that's, again, solution mindset.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's a good analogy. Just really quick. I know we're wrapping up here, but the treadmill thing that you brought up, a lot of people kind of like equating that to exercise. Like, if you want to do something but you don't quite know where you want to go yet, that's okay. Start doing it. Like, get on the treadmill so that like when you decide where you want to go, you have the endurance and the running skills to get there. Because if you just decide like, hey, I want to run that, like my spot's going to be like 4 miles down the road, I want to get there and turn around and come back. If you just decide that one day and you start running to that spot, seeing how far you can get and coming back, it's going to take a lot longer to get there than if you say, you know what, I'm going to want to get to a spot one day, but I don't know where it is. Let me start practicing for that now. Let me get on the treadmill. And then when I decide where I want to go, I can hop off and just do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just to like build off that exercise example, because I think exercise is super easy to like, have comparisons to, but like, let's say you want to get fit and you're like, oh, do I grow biceps first? Do I grow chest first? Like every other man out there. Do I do legs? Probably not. But, it's like, no, don't get that technical. Just know that you want to get fit, go in the gym. And then once you start working out, then they'll eventually be like, okay, maybe I should start doing biceps more. Maybe I should do more push-ups. It's like, do you get that because of the initial steps you took and the experience that you got along the way? So.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Chapman, thank you so much for being on us with Canopy Cast. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, please go and check out all of his stuff. Check out his podcast, all of his stuff on LinkedIn and etc. We will be posting all of that. So check that out down below. Chris, thank you so much for being on with us.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. I had a blast being on, and I'm pumped that I actually got to see your face because we've had a lot of conversations on the phone. So matching a face to name.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much.
And for everyone, this has been Canopy Cast. We'll see you next time.